getting told that, hey, half your team said that they don't want you on the team because you're a girl. What do you want to do? And making a choice at 9 that, well, they're not like, I'm on this team. And then having to walk into that locker room the next day with my head held high, knowing that half the boys were trying to kick me off. And that, like, I think is, obviously something that really shaped the person that I am today.
That was a clip from my conversation with Lexi LaFleur Brown, who is not only a really cool hockey content creator, but also an incredible hockey romance author. She has 2 books out, one that came out last year, which was one of my favorite hockey romances of the year, called Shoot Your Shot, and one that just came out yesterday called Evening the Score. Lexi is not only a hockey content creator and a hockey romance author, she also played hockey growing up and fell in love with a hockey player and ultimately ended up having her entire life revolve around hockey as a whole. Lexi and I spent about an hour talking about the role that hockey has played in her life from the very beginning. She talks about how her family had been Toronto Maple Leafs fans from the very beginning, way before she was even born, how hockey runs in her blood, and how growing up playing hockey was not always the most welcoming experience. And of course, we took some time to talk about both of her books, how hockey fits into them, and how she's creating media that's changing other people's lives. This was such a delightful conversation to have, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode of You Are What You Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to You Are What You Love. I am super excited about our guest today because I've been watching her videos online for a long time. And I also have been reading her books, and I think she is just such an incredible force in the hockey space. And so this is going to be a really fun episode because we are welcoming best-selling author and hockey content creator Lexi LaFleur Brown to the podcast. Lexi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm super excited. I also have to say your bangs look incredible today. Everything's looking just great. I love
it. It's a good bang day.
It is. I'm so jealous. I have curly hair and I'm always like jealous of a good bang because it's something I attempted to do in high school, which I wouldn't recommend if you
I mean, it's a phase. Everybody's got to have a bang phase. So I'm just holding on to mine a little bit longer.
It suits you. It's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm super hyped to have you on because I've been watching your videos for so long, and I also really, really loved Shoot Your Shot. I think it's one of those hockey romances that gets everything right. Like it has so much NHL lore and so much NHL facts that work really well without forcing like every page is not gameplay. You know what I mean? It feels like a really great setting.
Thank you so much. That was an important balance to achieve for me. And I love hockey so much. I've played it my whole life. So making sure that there was hockey on page was important, but also staying true to the genre. And there's a lot of things that hockey romance readers really love and appreciate. So making sure that, I had a nice balance of everything in there.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, if anyone's listening that is also a hockey viewer, which is a lot of this audience, so I would say anybody who's watching hockey and is on the internet has probably seen a lot of your videos. So for anyone who's not familiar, you make great content, just sort of like, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's covering your book or hockey romance in general, sometimes it's background on like life previously as an NHL wag. But all of it is very, very fun. And I also think you've done a great job of kind of welcoming a new group of fans into the community. So I think for anyone who doesn't have that background, that's who Lexi is. Mm-hmm. Well, today I'm very excited because we're talking about the thing that changed your life. So what is the piece of media that changed your life?
We're here to talk about hockey. I desperately was trying to think of something. There is so much pressure to think of one piece of media that changed your life. And obviously so many things came to mind. And, I am an author and I was like, oh my gosh, I should probably pick a book, or there are so many TV shows and movies. But at the heart of it, I just kept thinking of hockey. There really is nothing that has had a bigger impact on my life than hockey, and continues to have a big impact on my life.
Do you remember like the first time you ever watched a hockey game?
I don't, because I think it was just always on in the background. And when I was a kid, going to an NHL game was just not financially possible. Like it just wasn't something that we did. But we watched it on TV and we watched a lot of it. And hockey was just always there. And so like, there's not like one moment where I think like, oh, what is this? Oh, this is hockey. Like I really, as a baby, was raised to love hockey and love the Toronto Maple Leafs. And and was always told hockey's in our blood. And so, yeah, it was just always something that was there that I grew up with.
So your family was a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan. You're sort of like born into suffering to some degree, but
yes,
are you? And did you grow up in Toronto?
No, I grew up in Northern Ontario. So we're about 3.5 hours from Toronto. And where I'm from, it's quite a diverse kind of fandom because you get to choose. There's a lot of Toronto Maple Leaf fans where I'm from. There's a lot of Ottawa Senators fans where I'm from. And then there's also Montreal Canadian fans. And then obviously there's, some random fans sprinkled in there. But typically those are like the big three from my small hometown. And we were a Toronto Maple Leaf household.
Do you know how your family chose the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I don't, but it comes from my great grandmother. Like it goes way back to like the beginning of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And yeah, that was just the team that was picked and that we rode hard for.
That's wild. How did it feel to be like born into fandom? Because I think it depends on, especially with sports, like there's so much of that where it can be family related or hometown related. And then there's also people who come into sports later and just, pick a team regardless of their feelings. Like there's a lot of new people kind of getting into hockey fans now and just choosing teams based off of vibes. But how did it feel to like literally be born into, when we talk about fandom, it's like fanaticism, that level of excitement?
I mean, you don't know anything else. Like I know there's so many new hockey fans now who are like, who am I going to cheer for? Like I couldn't even imagine having the choice. Like I was not allowed to cheer for another team. I remember as a kid, like bringing home like a little Montreal Canadiens like keychain and my dad throwing it out and being like, never again. Like it was really that serious for my household. But then like there's all these little, like there's like community to it too, which was so nice. And we would all watch the games together and we had all these superstitions that we would do together. And we all suffered together. like Toronto Stanley Cup predates my father. So like it is really, we are true fans because, you're not just picking a team that's doing good. You're really living through all the growing pains. But it was exciting. I mean, it was nice to have this like little sense of belonging within your own family.
Yeah, it's so funny that you bring up like the idea of suffering or together and the idea of being a real fan connected to that team. Because for anyone who's not super familiar with hockey in general, Canada has not brought home the Stanley Cup since 1993 when the Montreal Canadiens brought it home, which they also beat my team that year. So, maybe maybe that was
still
the
pain,
trouble,
still pain.
still tough.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I feel like hockey and Canadians have such a specific connection to hockey in general. And there's also this level of now the league they haven't been able to bring home a Stanley Cup at all. Like what makes you maintain a relationship with a team that you're like, well, I guess it's another year of just being let down?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. And I think in a way, like that shows how true of a fan you are. Like there's also this badge of honor that comes with it of like being like, I'm in this because I truly do love this franchise, not because I just want to watch them win or celebrate the victories. And I think that it does make those little victories even sweeter. Like, the Leafs went a long time without making the playoffs. And then when they made the playoffs again, or, getting some really good, they got some really good players in the last 10 years, which was really exciting for the franchise. So little stuff like that, I think when you suffer for it more, like it just makes it all that sweeter. And I know how much that city wants a Stanley Cup. Like I really do. And same with Canada, any Canadian city, like they really want it. And I know when it does happen, it's the whole country's gonna go nuts.
Yeah.
But you also endure because you have the Olympics too, which is also a sensitive subject this year. But usually that's like, but usually, you also have the Olympics that you can that you can watch too and celebrate.
Yeah, but you know what? The women did a great job this year. So
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
With your kind of fandom and being born into it, do you have a moment where it went from being just something that you did with your family because everybody did that to maybe a more personal or individual connection?
Yeah, I think when I started playing myself, like that's when it like became more for me. There was an element of like, I'm challenging myself with this new thing. I'm learning a new sport. This goes beyond just, watching something or being a fan of something. Like now it's me who's on the ice. And so I would say like when I started playing, and I was around, I think I was like 8 or 9 when I started playing.
Okay. Did you start playing just recreationally? Did you play on like a travel team? How did you get into it?
Yeah, I started playing recreationally for a girls team. And then I did that for a year. And then I played boys youth hockey. And then I played girls rep hockey. And I just kind of, again, a small town. So I was just kind of really playing as much hockey as I could whenever I could. I had so much fun doing it. I was working hockey camps. I was playing roller hockey and 3-on-3 hockey. I was really I was so dedicated to it. When I was a kid and teenager, I just couldn't get enough. And so I did as much hockey as I could. And so I played girls hockey and women's hockey in college and stuff. But then I've also played a lot of boys hockey too, which is pretty common when you're a goalie. It's common for, to go back and forth or to play wherever.
How did you pick goalie? Did you start out knowing that that's what you wanted to do, or did you shift into that position?
I don't know. I think that there was like an element of like, I thought, okay, I don't have to be a really good skater because I'll just be a net. And then I remember like showing up to the first practice and my coach saying like the goalie needs to be the best skater on the team. And that's like a literal belief that the goalie should be the best. And I'm just like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like I didn't know this. Nobody told me this and then also I was really obsessed with Curtis Joseph, who was the goalie for the Toronto Maple Leafs at the time when I was watching. And so it just felt like, oh, I've got to be a net. And it's such, I couldn't imagine. I've played out a couple times, but it really is like my home. I couldn't imagine venturing out of the crease.
It's so funny. I just started playing hockey, like just started learning, which I'm not 8 or 9. So we're working our way through it. But every time someone I meet that's like a goalie, I'm like, that sounds like my nightmare. Like pucks flying, and no matter what you do, you're wrong. Like you could have the best game ever and leave one in. Oh, how did you manage that pressure? Like, do you find in your life that you seek out that type of pressure? You're like a very genuinely accomplished person, not only like with your online career and with your books, but also you have multiple degrees, you have a PhD, like across the board, you're pretty high stakes as a person.
Yeah. I think I definitely like I'm never afraid to try or embarrassed to fail. And so I think that person, you definitely have to have that personality if you're going to be a goalie, because there are going to be times when you're being embarrassed, you're being lit up and you're having a really bad game, and you have to have like a pretty tough mentality to get through it. Being a goalie they say it's 90% mental, 10% gameplay. And so, I'm definitely a very determined person, and it's certainly in my personality, which I think is also reflected. I have a PhD, writing a book, like I just kind of really go for it. And so I think that's just one of my personality traits.
Yeah. Were your parents like maybe supportive, unsupportive, scared of you getting in the goal, being on the ice like that?
I don't think they knew what they were getting into, and I think they would have said no, because I genuinely don't think any of us really knew what we were getting into. Like, it's a very expensive position. Like that alone is tough. Like, it's very expensive for equipment. And so I remember having to like borrow the league's equipment instead of buying new equipment every year. It's thousands of dollars. So there's like the financial aspect of being a goalie. Right. And then there's also the aspect of how nerve-wracking it is. And I think it was hard for my parents. Certainly my dad, I remember him like always standing behind me to watch the games. And he said when I was a kid and I was playing boys hockey, that like I would skate out towards my net and, I'm forward facing the fans. And then I would stop and spin around and get in my net, and everybody would gasp because they would see my long ponytail and they'd be like, oh, it's a girl. They have a girl on their team. And like, my parents you kind of like have to listen like to other parents, like, gossiping about your kid. And when you're a goalie, you get a lot of talks because you're blamed for the loss or whatever. But I don't know. I think they would have said no. I think about like, I think about how like I married JT and he was a pro hockey player. And people always say, like, was it nerve wracking watching him fight? Like, was that scary? And I always say no. And I think like, but if he was a goalie, I don't think I could have done that. Like, I think
Really?
I could watch, I think I could watch my significant other get in fights and, whatever, he's a forward. Oh no, he missed an empty net or something. Like, like whatever, like whatever embarrassing thing a forward can do. But like, if my significant other was a goalie, I think I would be a nervous wreck. Like I don't think I could watch that.
No, so
I don't know how my parents did it.
Yeah, I can't imagine, because I think about it like obviously just from watching it as a fan and watching it in like the pros and everything like that. And there's so much praise for a goalie when you're doing well. And even when you are doing well and things just don't go your way, like I'm no stranger to yelling at my TV or at the ice that I hate you and that I think you should get your life together and you have one job. It's like, and I'm trying to imagine what that would be like at 9, listening to other parents talk about your 9-year-old kid. And then how was your experience in the locker room at that age?
Yeah, it was tough. I have like traumatic stories from playing youth boys hockey. And I've shared this on my social media, like the story of my teammate trying to kick me off the team and phoning up all of all of our teammates and saying like, do you want her off the team? Yes or no? And the like president of that youth association having to call my mom and say, hey, look, there's been an incident, and getting told that, hey, half your team said that they don't want you on the team because you're a girl. What do you want to do? And making a choice at 9 that, well, they're not like, I'm on this team. And then having to walk into that locker room the next day with my head held high, knowing that half the boys were trying to kick me off. And that, like, I think is, obviously something that really shaped the person that I am today. Tough to go through as a kid, but like, even as an adult, there are still hockey spaces that like I walk into and I still kind of feel the same way. Like there is still people who either, watch or love hockey or are somehow involved in the hockey community who still feel like, whether it's a woman or a queer person or a person of color, like they still have these opinions of this is our game and you're not welcome here. And so like, obviously I went through it the first time when I was 8, but that's not like an exclusive experience to me. Like I know that is something JT has felt as, a Black player. That's something that I know I've had other queer friends feel, or it's unfortunately common in hockey.
I guess you have this sort of flashpoint moment at 9 that you can look at and say, this is the moment that I decided like I wasn't going to let someone tell me I didn't belong here. Do you feel like your parents were open to you saying either one? Like, would they have let you quit? Did they maybe want you to step away from it? Or did they really let you make that decision at 9?
Yeah, no, they were very supportive. I think like they preferred me playing girls hockey because it was a more supportive, inclusive, just like I was having more fun. But ultimately I wanted to play wherever it was most competitive for me. And I remember at that age, that's where I was with the boys house league team. And so like, it was really, they were supportive no matter what. And I think that like, as a parent, all you can do is really, trust your kid and then be there for them. And I think that that's like partially what gave me the strength to keep playing too, was that my parents were like, we support you. We know you should be here. Like, and like I said, my dad always saying hockey's in our blood. Like, this is who we are. You deserve to be here just as much as everybody else.
Yeah. When you say hockey's in your blood, what do you mean by that? Like, what is that kind of connection?
Yeah. So I'm indigenous. My dad's side of the family is indigenous. So for me, my tie to my indigeneity is really with hockey. Like I said, my great grandmother was the one who was the Toronto Maple Leaf fan and was the hockey fan. And then my mama was a big hockey fan too, a big Leaf fan. And so like my connection to that part of my culture and that part of myself, it's really tied to hockey. Just because that's such a big part of who we are. And my dad played and so like, I think as a kid, I didn't really know what he was saying. Like, I think, like, I'm just like, yeah, okay. we love hockey. We're crazy for the Toronto. Like, obviously, if we're still cheering for the Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously we're in it. But as I get older, like, yeah, oh, that's such, even when I'm on the ice, I feel so connected to myself and and my ancestors and the people who came before me and love this sport. And I feel really lucky. Like, it feels like something that was passed down to me. And I feel really lucky that they did that for me.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think a lot of what you're talking about with the idea of your connection to hockey, and also the way that perhaps people who are not necessarily responsible for the sport being invented, like, that is a part of the hockey history that we don't talk about enough, or that indigenous people are the kind of founders of this game, or not kind of, genuinely the founders of this game. And we don't speak about that very much. And it's interesting because I think the people who are trying to sort of like collectively keep diversity out of hockey also aren't respecting where the game came from in the first place by doing that. And I think that's like a big conversation right now in hockey fandom, in terms of like, how do you make space for yourself or want to stay in a space where people don't necessarily want you there? And I think there are obviously two different takes on it, right? Like, you can let someone tell you don't belong here, or feel like you don't want to be in this space and you don't want to deal with it, which I think is a valid, not everybody can kind of hold on to that feeling or necessarily wants to put themselves in that position. But on the other side, there's, I think, a take that you and I are more aligned on in general, which is, why should anyone get to tell me I don't belong here? And then one step further, almost, who even said that you belong here? Like, who said you get to take over this and decide? And it seems like that's something that you've not necessarily warred with. Like, it just seems like it's a decision that you made right off the bat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, when I was a kid, I kind of made that decision for myself. And if I'm going to be brave enough to make that decision at 8, I'm going to be brave enough to continue to make it. But I always say, like, if anybody's ever, asking for advice, I always say, like, protect your peace. Like, you have to do what's best for you. But the way I see it is, like, I love this and I'm not going to go anywhere. But it's also important to find your community as a source of strength and comfort. And obviously, having the right community when you love something makes it that much fun, that much more fun. And so finding that right group, whether you're doing Learn to Play Hockey or whether you're just a fan of it, finding the right community online or in real life, it can really make the difference.
Yeah. What did your community look like at that time, or maybe kind of as you continued to grow and continued to play? There's, on the ice, maybe not the best community for you. How were you building a community for yourself outside of that?
Yeah, I mean, I luckily had really great parents who were very supportive. And then I did have a few teammates who were genuinely my friends and who stuck by me. Which was really nice. And then as I got older, coaches or like a goalie coach who I could really trust as a mentor. And then my husband is like a huge source of strength. I see what, resilience he has and the things that he's overcome and the advice that he gives to, that he still gives to kids. So as an adult, I think that, he's wonderful to listen to he's got so much great lived experience in it that I've learned a lot from.
Yeah, I would love, actually, I feel like people who don't know your lore, you also have like an incredible hockey love story. How did you meet your husband?
Yeah, we met on social media. We met in the DMs, but then we met in real life in Syracuse, New York. I was going to grad school and he was playing in the AHL there. And we just connected and really hit it off. And I've been following, his hockey life since. It's taken us to Tampa. It's taken us to Anaheim. It's taken us to Minnesota. And now we're here in Seattle. He does the color commentating for the Seattle Kraken. And so we've kind of been all over and yeah, it's just like this continuation of like, growing up, hockey was really my first true love. And then my second is, this scrappy winger that I met in Syracuse. but just this continuation of hockey having such a huge impact on my life. And then now I write hockey romance. And so it's me and hockey.
Yeah, you have like a 3-act structure of falling in love, but through hockey, which I think is amazing. Do you remember like the first hockey romance that you picked up? When did you shift from just sort of living hockey and watching it to reading about it?
Yeah, I would say a few years ago, I had a lot of my followers, it was everywhere on Book Talk, and a lot of my followers were asking me to read it, and eventually I picked up. I started with The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which I think is a great hockey romance to start with for anybody. But I really started to get into it because I learned that hockey romance readers were becoming fans of hockey through these books. And I have always been interested in how do we grow the game? How do we get more women, more queer people, more people of color to love hockey and to join this community? And so that was really what interested me. And I was like, okay, I've got to really do a deep dive into these books. I got to see what's up. And I really, for like a year, consumed, I think, every single hockey romance book. And I had also started writing my own because writing a book had always been something that I knew I was eventually going to get to. And so, yeah, it just kind of all came together really organically and just made sense to me. Like it was the right thing to do. And it's been a lot of fun. And I've got a second book coming out. So I adore hockey, and hockey romance has been a really great creative outlet.
Yeah, I think I found the same thing, obviously, that hockey romance has made so many new fans, even before, obviously right now we're having maybe the biggest version of it we've ever had with Heated Rivalry. But it's been a really big kind of trend in general. And I think a lot of it is partially because of how much love there is for hockey in these books, especially the ones that really do take off. Like I think we've talked a little offline about Heated Rivalry, and also, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I think your book does the same thing. We've talked about hockey for about a half an hour now of like how much this has been such a core thing in your life. And I'm curious, when you started reading, did you feel like there was a specific thing that could, because I think it's the case with a lot of sports romance. Like we're seeing a big move in F1 fans becoming fans through, romance books. Same thing with football sometimes. Like obviously we had the Taylor Swift sort of effect as they branded it when she started dating Travis Kelce. But I think hockey specifically has the biggest turnover of people that read a hockey romance and then say, well, like maybe I'll watch a game. Maybe I care a little bit more. Was there anything that stuck out to you about hockey romance specifically that pointed to that trend?
I think that hockey is the most exciting sport to watch, and certainly the most exciting sport to see live. And I honestly think that has an impact because these books are very entertaining, right? Like they're high stakes. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of tropes in them. Like they're very entertaining, page turning books. And then sometimes when you have something like that, and then you go and watch golf and you're like, well, this isn't living up to the book. But when you put down a hockey romance and you watch a hockey game, you're like, oh, this is crazy. They're fighting each other. Like they're throwing their bodies around. Like this is entertaining, and it's fast paced, and it's back and forth, and they're scoring, and so I think that like I think that like, you read the book, you put it down, you watch the game, you're like, oh, these are very similar in entertainment factor. So I think that maybe is hopefully creating fans.
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, I would love to talk a little bit about Shoot Your Shot, because I think I reread it again this week, actually, before we chatted. And I think it's genuinely, there's something really wonderful about the characters and the way that you've set it up, because I think you have both this space where you have a female main character who, very unlike you, knows literally nothing about hockey, doesn't even realize that Seattle has a team. And then you have on the other side this amazing hockey player who has the number one draft pick, has kind of fallen from grace, and also has the weight of the world on his shoulders in terms of the fact that he's the highest ever Black draft pick in the NHL. There's just a lot of really rich character building, but also there's a lot of kind of allowing your female main character to be an outsider as the reader might be, and to kind of find that space with hockey. Was that something intentional that you wanted to be able to make that space for someone?
Yeah, it was definitely intentional. I think that I consider where my book is set, and I consider, the age and who my character is, and kind of like what she's doing, how she's moving around the world, around her, city. And it made sense for this character to kind of be oblivious to men's hockey. Like, she's just like, well, I'm not watching men's hockey. Like, what is this? None of my friends talk about this. Like, she probably knows about women's soccer. She probably knows about a women's derby team or what, like roller derby team. But like, she doesn't care about men's hockey. And so that was part of her character. And also it adds like this layer of humor, and I can, make some jokes surrounding that.
Yeah, you have this great moment where she and her friends are at a game watching Jalen play, and someone asks about the goalie, and she has sort of like an inner monologue moment where she says, like, I asked if it was legal to touch the goalie, and he went on a rant for like an hour, and I had to come up with something else just to pivot. And it's so funny because there's a level of like, if you're a hockey fan, you're like, yeah, goalie interference would set someone off for about an hour to talk about, but also you're watching a character fall in love with someone who does something that she doesn't understand. I think it's just really genuinely a very fun kind of dynamic that you set up as well.
Thank you. They're opposites. So it definitely plays into the opposites attract thing.
Yeah. And it's opposites attract, but also in a space that the romance still has a lot of fun kind of back and forth in terms of banter. Like, I think sometimes you get a golden retriever, black cat romance type of thing where the guy's just like so nice and the girl's so mean, and you're like, gosh, I hope that's endearing to him. It seems like a lot's going on.
Yeah. It's like borderline bullying. Yeah.
Right. And you're like, I guess he's in love. It seems like it. Versus this is much more, they're definitely opposites, but also enjoying sort of needling at each other and kind of having that sort of banter, which is really balanced and really fun. And I think really stands out about their dynamic as well.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, of course. Another thing that I'm curious for you about this, we've talked a little bit about the idea of identity in hockey. We've talked about your identity as both a woman and as an indigenous person, and also about your husband's identity in hockey as a Black player. Identity is a core part of your books. I think both of them, the new one that's out now that came out yesterday called Evening the Score. How do you balance, or was it important to you to choose characters that maybe are not normally on the cover of a hockey romance book?
Yeah, very important for me. There has to be like a level of reality to these books, even though they are fictional. And I just think it's so much more interesting to kind of tell this real story. And it makes for a better character, I think, too. And also pulling from my own experience, there's always this element of like, how do I fit into hockey, or where do I fit into hockey? And so that's the story that I'm more interested in telling. This, and obviously these books have to have a certain level of escapism. Like, the world is bleak, and even hockey is pretty bleak at times. And so again, it's a balance of wanting to have this lovely, happily ever after romantic comedy that people can escape into, and feel safe to do so. But also, I want to write diverse characters. I want to write indigenous characters and queer characters, and I want their stories to be grounded in reality too.
Yeah. How did you, when you kind of sat down, and I know we've talked a little bit about the idea of you've gone through this world of hockey, you still play hockey, you're completely entrenched in it. And then you start reading hockey romance just to kind of understand what's making it work. Was there a moment where you decided, okay, you had always wanted to write a book and you sat down? Did the characters come to you first? Did the messaging that you wanted to portray, or the world, like, what was the space that kind of locked in and said, okay, this is the one?
Yeah, I think what came to me first was like this really broad idea of superstition and how that ties into hockey, not just like professional hockey players, but sports in general. And so that was really the starting point. And then I had to shape my characters. And, it's set in Seattle. And so it really made sense that Lucy is queer and all her friends are queer. And there's this real found family element. And then with Jalen, I really wanted to tell the story of like this concept that we have where we sort of write off players if they have a couple bad seasons. And for him, the pressure of being a first round draft pick and then not living up to that expectation and to not hit the peak of the expectation means to have totally failed. And so him turning to superstition. And that it just kind of, it starts with this one idea and then it really sort of starts to form.
Yeah, and obviously superstition is huge in this. For anyone who hasn't read the book yet, Jalen believes that Lucy is his good luck charm and is adamant that he's got to make that work. Do you have one of the things that you thank in the acknowledgements, or one of the people that you thank in your acknowledgements, is your husband for working through all of the NHL lore with you? Do you have any of like his or real life superstitions in this book or in Evening the Score as well?
He is like the least superstitious person ever, which makes my life easier because I feel like I'm a bit more superstitious than him, but he's so not superstitious. And then the other funny thing is that like, I actually think I'm a bad luck charm for him because when we first met, he was playing in the AHL and he lost the Calder Cup. And then a couple years later, like when we got married, he lost the Stanley Cup. And so not only is he not superstitious, but I think I'm bad luck. So we're a little bit like the opposite of the characters I've written, I think.
You had like a little bit of a fantasy. You're like, what if everything worked out correctly?
What if I was good luck though? Yeah.
That's so funny. Do you have any, like you said, you're superstitious, and I'm curious, like, what are your game day superstitions as either a player or a fan?
Oh my God. I have more for myself when I'm playing. There's so much routine and ritual from like where I sit in the locker room, how I, tap my posts. I talk to my post. That's a really common one for goalies to like, if a puck goes off the post, you have to thank your post. And then when it comes to like when it comes to watching his games or when it comes to watching, even just watching the Kraken now, I'm way less superstitious. There maybe was like a little element of like, oh, these are my lucky shoes. I see sometimes NHL wags, they'll have superstition about like a certain pair of shoes or a certain jacket. Or like sometimes if we were down, there's like a family room, a wives room at the games. And like sometimes if we were down there watching a period and they played really well, we would be like, we can't go back up into the stands. Like this is the good luck spot. And so we would all have to stay down there. So I think like, and to a degree, I think sometimes that the significant others are just as superstitious as the players.
That's so funny. Speaking of significant others, one really good moment I think that stood out to me a lot in Shoot Your Shot is this moment where Lucy goes to a game with her friends, and she, like you said, she's bisexual. She's with her queer friends that are at this game. It's maybe not your typical hockey fan, and they happen to be sitting where they also see the Wags come in. And we kind of watch this description from her side of Lucy is tattooed. She's doing her thing. She's wearing team gear. She's thrifted at this point. And she is, even though this is Pride Night, this is during Pride Night as well, she's looking at this group of women who are perfectly polished, like all blonde, all kind of not at all in team gear, expensive clothes. I really loved that moment because it felt like there was this character who was maybe against her own desires, becoming a fan of hockey, starting to care about this, and then almost being slapped in the face with the idea of like, is this a future that would really welcome me? And I felt it a lot, I think maybe just because we're looking at this year of hockey and how it's been maybe a little jarring of whether or not everybody's welcome in this space. And I thought you did such a good job of crystallizing that feeling. Obviously, this was written before this year, but I wonder how much of that was your experience, how much of that was experiences that you watched, and how you managed to fit some of those in this book, because like you said, you've set up this world where for most of the time you're like, oh, everybody's having a great time. She's painting a mural. We're getting to see Jalen come to a queer fundraiser. We're seeing Pride Night. We're like, oh, everything's great. And then it's sort of shattered.
Yeah. Yeah. That scene was really important for me because that's like something that I definitely felt going into that kind of wife, girlfriend, environment, this feeling of like, oh my God, how do I fit in here? And like, I think like visually, I certainly do. But there's still like this element of like, I'm queer. My husband I'm queer. My husband and I are both very outspoken politically. Like we are sort of the oddball out at times. We are sort of the black sheep at times. And so I definitely had this feeling of like, oh my God, where do I fit in here? How do I fit in here? I've never been in a sorority. And maybe if I had been in a sorority, I would have like been better equipped or better prepared. But it's even just like this element of like being around really rich people for the first time. That was also like, I was just like, oh my God, like my shoes are from Value Village. Like, cause I was right out of college. Like I'm just like, oh my God. Like, and I remember somebody like making fun of, I had like this knockoff Gucci purse that I thrifted and loved. And I remember somebody like making fun of it to my face. And like, I remember wearing Tim's to a hockey game and somebody being like, I wear the same shoes at my cottage when I do yard work. Like stuff like that, like this element of like, I know. And like, that's not everybody. Like there's also some really wonderful, great experiences and friendships, but there certainly were little tiny things where you're just like, oh my God, like where do I fit into this world? Like this is a whole new experience. This is a whole new world. I feel so uncomfortable in my own skin. I don't know how do I make friends in this situation? And I remember being like, I was like 21, 22. And that was like a tough thing to be thrown into. And so, yeah, that scene comes from like a very true place of vulnerability for myself. And certainly I could see the character feeling that too. And as the story progresses, like, she learns that not all of these girls are superficial or whatever kind of predetermined judgment she had on them. And she's able to make a true friendship there. But also like there is like this element of, and it's fun to write, a little bit of drama into it.
Yeah, like you said, it's not, there's almost a really nice flip on this feeling where nobody came up to her and said, oh, are you dating Jalen? We wish you weren't here, or you look ridiculous, or anything like that. She sees this happen and decides that she's, not welcome, or that she's not the fit there. And she's waiting for someone else to say it. And like you said, there is that amount of judgment that she's putting on someone because of how they look. And it does get flipped on its head a little later. So I also think that that's wonderful. There's like a number of moments where it's like, okay, yeah, as much as you've decided that maybe you're not welcome here, there's also probably people here. There's definitely people in this space that want you here and that would welcome you and be excited about it. So it's nice. It's like it's a very good balance. I think that moment was very poignant. And then the fact that it's true in some cases and gets deconstructed in others, which I think is very true of the hockey space in general, which I love. And then the other big thing from Shoot Your Shot that I wanted to touch on a little bit is the way that you portray grief, and maybe almost the way that Jalen is not outwardly showing that he's grieving, but that it is this inward issue that is overly affecting his hockey. And as much as his superstition and sort of looking at that is to try to fix his hockey game, it's also a little bit of a way for him to avoid something that he really needs to deal with in this grief. And I am curious how you worked through that mental aspect of bringing grief in a way that, as someone who's experienced grief and is still very much dealing with it and often watches sports and reads books as an escapism, I find myself to be very critical about the way that grief can be portrayed in books and in media. And I think you do a very honest job of it in this book, because there's a space where it almost feels like Jalen, despite being as positive as he is, and despite being this very warm and happy character, is refusing to be kind with himself and deal with it as well, or even acknowledge that it's something that might be throwing him off his game. So yeah, I would love to know a little bit about how you approach that.
Yeah, I think that's a real issue with athletes is like you're sort of trained and conditioned to be really tough physically, mentally, to put the game above everything. And so that's like what he knows and what he came from. And a lot of the time, like, even if you are dealing with something, like the escape is hockey, everything is hockey. And so that's what he's trying to do, is really lean into hockey, and it's not going, the right way, because he's avoiding his true feelings. He's avoiding dealing with what, he's putting off. And I think it's also true of hockey, this idea that like you can't step away from the game. Like you can't take a week off. You can't take time off. And I think this season, like we've seen that with certain players who have needed to take time off from the game. And there's always conversation about it, whether it's rumors or critique or you're getting called soft. And everybody always says like, we need to support, mental illness is real, and we need to take care of our mental health. And everybody talks this big game, but I think when it comes down to it, like we're still lagging in the sensitivity that we show towards these genuine feelings. And like another thing that I wrote in the book is like, he's like, I've played with a broken ankle, I've played with a torn this, a hurt that, like I've these players will get cuts on their face and stitches and go right back out onto the ice. And these things are celebrated. But what happens when there's an injury that isn't visible, and how serious do we take that? And what do we do to treat that? Because you can't see it. And so I think he's in denial. Like, I can't see it. I'm not bleeding from my lip. I don't need stitches.
Right. Yeah. He just needs a little bit of smelling salts and he'll get on the game and be fine.
Yeah.
There's a great moment too, as well, where you have him not understanding that like the reason he can't catch his breath has nothing to do with his physical ability. He asks for an inhaler and is still unable to play. And I think it's really interesting, this idea of like being tough, of the support of mental illness that, like you said, even this season alone, we had someone take off a couple of weeks, and the rumors that flew out of that, just a desire to take some personal time off for a personal reason, and it didn't affect it in a serious way, became this huge thing that then had to be addressed in even more so, to just get out and say like, I'm not, these rumors are completely unfounded. I think it's just insane. But like you said, it's a great reminder that mental health is important, even if it's affecting your favorite hockey team winning a game or two. Like,
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, to shift a little, you just had another wonderful book come out called Evening the Score. I was very lucky to get to read it a little bit early. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, since it literally just came out yesterday as this episode is airing. But for anyone who doesn't know about Evening the Score, what is Evening the Score about?
Yes, it's my second hockey rom-com. And in it, Olivia takes a temp job as an NHL mascot to seek revenge on their new star player. So there's like a lot of shenanigans. It's kind of like Hannah Montana, secret double life, kind of like John Tucker Must Die. There's some sabotaging, and maybe she finds out that he's not as bad as she once thought.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one the setup is so fun. The mascot idea I think mascots in general, especially in hockey, we have some great ones. We've got Gritty. We've got, my superstition's getting to me. I'm like, I'm not about to mention anybody I might have to play in the playoffs. Me personally, I'll be on the ice. But yeah, I think you have this mascot culture in sports is so fun. And there is something wonderful about the idea of not knowing who's in the suit. What made you decide to take that on as a romantic trope?
Yeah, well, I really love mascot lore, and I really love this idea of like a big time, and Gritty's like the perfect example of like a mascot who's on Abbott Elementary or on, Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show. Like he's everywhere, but like he can't tell anybody about it. Like like the person in the suit can't be like, hey, I'm on Abbott Elementary. Like, because his identity it has to be a secret. And like the mascot, the man in the suit, like his mom can't even brag. Like, my kid's on, this really cool TV show. Like, it really is this big secret. And so that I just found that so interesting. Like, oh, somebody could be in the suit and and maybe she's trying to sabotage him and it's all top secret and nobody needs to know who she is. And then like the concept of having like a mascot handbook also came to me of like, what are their rules? And so that was really funny to me. And then I do know like a couple mascots. I do have the intel, the privy of knowing a couple. And it's such like a stereotypical person. It's such a stereotypical mascot that like this other idea of what kind of person can actually do that job. So I was just really like obsessed with the whole idea. And I was like, okay, I have to try and work this into one of my books because I just find I find it so funny. And I think it offers like a lot of comedic relief throughout the book.
It's so funny. And it also, as soon as the cover for this one came out, I was so excited because one of my favorite things that happens every year are like around college graduation time where all of the college mascots reveal.
I love
incredible.
That. So
and there's
funny.
something very fun of that where you're just like there's something, I don't know. I love the idea of like a 4-year long, see, it's obviously not that long in this book as well, but holding that secret for even a small period of time and being like, who could you be? Like, you'll never know. Like you said, the Abbott Elementary one, there's even this like moment where they're all thinking, oh, it's the janitor. He's running away to be the mascot. It's just such a delightful part of sports, I feel. And then to add the idea of not only it's the sports, like the mascot sort of lore, but also the idea that she's doing this to commit crimes to some degree. Like she's ready to
like take him down. Yeah.
This one has a very different tone because it is a more of a revenge story in that world. How did you feel about bringing in, I think, again, there's any world of revenge brings in a level of competition. So with Shoot Your Shot, you have much more, not, there's not a nefarious plot. It's a superstition and sort of two characters coming together that are complete opposites. This one, you sort of bring in the idea of competition and that space as well. How did you feel about kind of changing that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to shake it up for your second book. So I was looking to do something really different. And for this book, I really started with the idea of like nepotism in hockey. And I was like, well, there's like I need to give them like some family beef. There's some history there. And then also this was really born from the idea of like, she thinks he's horrible and is trying to sabotage him in all aspects of his life. But what if every time she tries something, like he just rises out victoriously? And like eventually she like, she has to really, really, really re-examine, her perception of him and also like who he is. Because maybe he isn't that bad. And maybe she has been, her grief and the issues that she's dealing with, maybe they are influencing the way she's viewing the world.
Yeah, I personally love a good enemies to lovers trope and a good arc because it typically teaches the characters more about what they need to love about themselves versus what they hate about the person that they're enemies with that they come to love. And I think this book does a great job of paying that off as well. So I love it. I think also this is another character where you have an indigenous lead on the cover of a book about hockey wearing the mascot costume, which is such a fun experience. And she also, one of the things I love about the cover is she's also wearing indigenous jewelry, which is something that you personally make too. There's so much of your heart in these books and so much of your identity and care for this sport and for the community around it that I think these books feel very much like a space where someone who wants to feel welcome in hockey can be shown that someone who is very much in the world of hockey wants you here. I think that's sort of the biggest takeaway I have from your writing, which I think is really lovely.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Well, not to spoil any more, I would love to kind of just wrap up the episode the way we always do, which is that I always ask if you had never been introduced to hockey, which seems like was as soon as you came out of the womb, what would be different about you today?
Yeah. I couldn't even imagine a world in which I was not introduced to hockey because I would have to be dodging it, I think, every single day. And, we talked about my three acts. I
Mm.
don't know how I would have gotten through without ever seeing it. I wouldn't have been able to, be born in Canada and have never experienced hockey. And I'm grateful that I don't know a world in which I was able to dodge it.
Yeah, I think it's also what I love about listening to you talk about hockey is how much you've always felt that this is for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that could have shaken that out of you. And I think something that's really wonderful is this third act that you're sort of living now, that will hopefully have fourth and fifth and sixth acts in general as you continue to evolve. But this third
Mm-hmm.
act is also, I think, welcoming people and making people understand that you can have that bravery as well, which I think is really lovely. And it sounds like you wouldn't have necessarily had that if it hadn't been for your parents and your grandparents and your great grandparents believing that this is something that's in your blood, which I think is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, for anybody that would love to follow you along on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on all the social channels, Lexi LaFleur or Lexi LaFleur Brown. I love to, I love to make funny videos. I love to talk about hockey. I love to talk about, everything.
So be sure to follow along there. And of course, make sure that you are picking up Shoot Your Shot if you haven't read it yet, and Evening the Score, which is in all of your bookstores right now. Thank you so much, Lexi, for joining me. I had a great time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of You Are What You Love and joining me to talk about one of my very favorite topics, which is hockey. I would love to know what part of the episode stood out to you, if you have enjoyed hockey or felt the kind of battle that Lexi and I talked about whether or not you belong in this sport or another space. And if you are a hockey romance fan that started watching hockey because of hockey romance, what about the books really brought you into the sport? Be sure to, of course, pick up Lexi's books, both Shoot Your Shot and Evening the Score, which just came out yesterday and is available in bookstores now. As I said, I really enjoyed this book and I think it is such a fun one, so I hope you guys will take a chance on it and read it this week. As you guys know, I am a big sports romance fan, and I'm also not shy about telling you when I think one doesn't get it right, and Lexi absolutely gets it right on both of her books. Next week, we're having another author on that I am super excited about, Edward Schmidt. Edward is the author of The Open Era, a tennis romance novel that I really, really enjoyed. This book is not only a very great sports romance that really shows a very deep love for tennis, but also a really genuine and honest portrayal of mental health and anxiety. Next week, you'll be able to listen to me and Edward talk about tennis as a whole, the tennis players that he fell in love with, and his near-death experience at the US Open. It is a very fun and honestly, personally cathartic episode, so I hope you guys will tune in next week to listen to that. Be sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any of the You Are What You Love episodes, and of course, be sure to check out the YouTube series on sports romance if this was one that really stuck out to you. Until next week, I have been your host, Marissa Tandon, and I hope you are enjoying what you love.